Welcome everyone to the 19th Annual North American Basic Income Guarantee Congress. My name is Michael Howard. I'm co-chair of the Congress Organizing Committee and president of the U.S. Basic Income Guarantee Network and your host for this evening's events. We will be starting soon with the opening keynote session of the 19th Annual NABIG Congress. If you are joining us from Facebook or Crowdcast, please register at our website to gain access to over 40 hours of programming happening this weekend. The website is posted in the chat. We are going to have opening remarks and more details about the conference, probably following the panel discussion, although the mayors are running a little bit late, so we may start with some of the opening remarks first. I'm going to first introduce the moderator for the session, who is Stacy Rutland from the Income Movement. She will be hosting the Mayors for Guaranteed Income, Rise the Pilots. Stacy is the founder of Income Movement, an organization focused on building the movement necessary to take basic income from a radical political idea to federal policy. Income Movement focuses on grassroots organizing and coalition building across the basic income ecosystem and beyond. I'm going to turn it over to Stacy, and she may turn it back to me if we're still waiting on the mayors. So take it away, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Yes, I think we probably will start with a little bit more of the opening remarks. We have all of the mayors are running somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes late. And so we were thinking that we were going to do more of the deeper opening remarks after the mayors, just so that we were really kind of thoughtful about getting them started right on time. But we have the opportunity now to actually talk with the community first. So maybe we do just a little bit more about kind of the evolution of the NABIG conference, and if we have time to start inviting some committee members up, we can do that. We'll just kind of keep our eye on the panelists and the mayors as they join.
All right, we'll play it by ear. This is our first virtual Congress, so bear with us. Again, I'm Mike Howard, president of USBIG and the Congress co-chair. The title of this year's NABIG Congress is Basic Income, Knowledge, Activism, and Policy. This event is designed to mark the significant growth in the movement for basic income that has happened and been experienced over the last 18 months. The emergency response to the pandemic has included hundreds of billions of dollars in cash payments, without which tens of millions of people would have been plunged into deep poverty and economic distress. Policy ideas have been put on the table or even implemented that were scarcely imaginable a year and a half ago. Just to mention one example, the latest bill to pass the Congress includes an emergency extension of the child tax credit, increasing the amount and, most remarkably, extending the credit to poor families without any earned income, thereby reducing child poverty in the United States by 45% and lifting nearly 5 million children out of poverty. This effectively transforms the tax credit from an income supplement conditional on paid employment to an unconditional minimum income, albeit only for families with children. In one stroke, by removing the work condition, this is a huge step toward basic income. The challenge is now to make this policy permanent. Earlier in 2020, Representative Maxine Waters went even further, proposing at least $2,000 for every adult and an additional $1,000 for every child for each month of the crisis, a full universal basic income. Such ideas did not come out of nowhere. Prior to the pandemic, small groups of scholars and activists in meetings, including earlier NABIG congresses organized annually by USBIG or Basic Income Canada Network over the last 20 years, prepared the soil by articulating ideas, analyzing costs and benefits, exploring ethical justifications and objections, persuading opinion makers, and getting the idea before the public through referenda, such as the national Swiss referendum in 2016, pilot projects such as the aborted Ontario Basic Income Pilot in 2018 and 19, and Stockton's Basic Income Pilot, and editorials and news coverage in major media. Black Lives Matter officially endorsed UBI in 2016. In the same year, Andy Stern, President Emeritus of the Service Employees International Union, who will be speaking at this year's Congress and who spoke at the 2019 Congress, published a book called Raising the Floor and proposed a particular plan for a basic income. That plan was picked up and made the centerpiece of a presidential campaign by Andrew Yang, who has made basic income a household word. Veterans of the Yang campaign and others drawn to the idea of basic income have since formed activist organizations such as Humanity Forward and Income Movement, with membership now in the tens of thousands, unlike anything we have seen since the 1960s, when Martin Luther King endorsed the guaranteed minimum income, and the 1970s, when the US and Canada launched major minimum income experiments. The Poor People's Campaign, presenting in this Congress on Juneteenth, have called for a universal and guaranteed adequate income of at least $2,000 per person to adults, plus $1,000 for children per month. And movements prioritizing job guarantees, such as the Sunrise Movement, are sympathetic to universal basic income. This preparing of the soil is surely an important ingredient of the more progressive elements of the economic policy response we now see to the pandemic. And as you will see in the program, when we talk about a basic income guarantee, we do not have in mind a single idea, such as Andrew Yang's freedom dividend going to all adults, or the more targeted Stockton minimum income experiment. We are here to explore the pros and cons of basic income guarantees of all shapes and sizes. We have almost 40 sessions for you this year with over 110 speakers and experts, and we now at last count have over 530 people registered for the Congress. None of this would be possible without the work of the NABIG committee, which has been meeting for several months to make this happen. And let me now ask Stacy, are we ready to start with the mayor's panel, or should I continue with the introduction?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with the mayor's panel. And I know,
Right.
So Saadia and Mayor Schaaf are here, so we can go ahead and shift over. And as the other mayors join, we'll just bring them up as it makes sense. Thank you so much, Mike, for doing that level set and helping kind of set the context for where we are all together today as the kickoff of this 19th annual NABIG Congress is happening. We are very, very excited to have Mayors for a Guaranteed Income kick off what we know is going to be an exciting and energizing and inspiring 3-day event. So we're going to go ahead and move right into the conversations. And I'm going to first introduce who's here. I'm going to introduce the mayors that are going to join us also, just so that we don't have to pause and kind of break up the conversation as they join. But I'm going to go ahead and start first with Mayor Libby Schaaf, who is here. Welcome, Mayor Schaaf. So Mayor Schaaf was born and raised in Oakland. She was proudly described as the most unapologetic sanctuary city in America, which I love. I had to make sure that got included here. Mayor Schaaf is helping launch Oakland Resilient Families, one of the largest guaranteed income pilots in the country. The pilot is a collaboration between Oakland-based nonprofit Up Together and the National Mayors for the Guaranteed Income Coalition. And they'll be providing 600 families with low incomes, $500 per month for 18 months. I believe that's right, but I know, Mayor, you'll let me know if I got the details wrong. So welcome so much, Mayor Schaaf. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And then I want to also introduce Saadia McConville. So Saadia is Communications Director for Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and also advises several other organizations in the economic justice space on their communication strategies as well. She's well versed in this, the work that's been happening for many years around guaranteed income. So we're super excited to have her here. Before starting her own firm, she ran communications for Economic Security Project, which is probably one of the earliest organizations that's really been working in the policy space around guaranteed income. She's led all the media strategy around guaranteed income pilots, cash policies, helping with narrative change as this movement has grown. Her prior advocacy work included working in immigration rights, global health, and in the UN Refugee Agency. So she's also a former TV reporter and knows all the things inside and out about how to how to lead and be strategic about messaging and stories and making sure all of the great work that the mayors have been doing is getting the proper amount of attention out there in the media. So welcome, Saadia.
Thanks, I'm so excited to be here.
So while we're waiting for the other mayors to join, let's go ahead and do a little bit of context setting around Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, which I think we can probably, Saadia, have you do a little of at the outset. So can you tell us about the evolution of Mayors for Guaranteed Income from kind of the initial idea or early days to where we find ourselves, where you find yourselves today?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are some obvious logistical reasons behind why MGI was founded. Michael Tubbs, who I think most people in the audience are probably familiar with, was asked all the time by other mayors, how do I replicate a project like this in my own city? And before MGI existed, there just wasn't really a one-stop shop to go to for that infrastructure and guidance needed for a city to start their own pilot. There's a lot that's involved, from fundraising to storytelling, to disbursements, to how people are going to receive the money, to making sure benefits are preserved. And there's also the reality that, at the time when we were founded in June of last year, seed was about to end. And we all recognized that guaranteed income was something that needed to go beyond one city and beyond one mayor. So the founding in June of last year came at the height of the pandemic, when a lot of people were really struggling, a lot of those people struggling for the first time. And it was just clear that that economic devastation was not going to go away in a few weeks or even a few months, and at this point, even a few years. And for me, I think this is kind of like the most important part. There's this moral imperative behind MGI. It's very much rooted in the racial and gender justice history of guaranteed income. And also last year, we had protests across the country, around the world, demanding equity for people of color, particularly Black Americans who have historically been excluded from a lot of the economic gains that white Americans have had access to. And so MGI is founded on the belief that in the richest country in the world, nobody should live in poverty, and that we can absolutely afford an income floor for everyone who needs one. So at its core, MGI is based on the truth that financial instability is not the failure of individuals, but rather the failure of policies.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about where you guys are at now. How many mayors do you have on board? How many pilots? What's the kind of status of where things are with pilots? Do you have a little about that?
Yeah, so we started with 11 mayors, including Mayor Schaaf, and we are now up to 52 mayors. So it's been huge growth in under a year. It'll be a year in about 2 weeks. And in terms of pilots, we have 8 that have officially launched, and then we have about 16 that are announced, but are in the design phases and haven't yet started giving out money. So a couple dozen across the country that just didn't exist a year ago. So it's been pretty tremendous growth and exciting. I think it's exciting, and it's also unfortunate because the reasons that I think this happened are because of the pandemic and people recognizing that this is the way that you get people relief quickly. But I think that if there's any silver lining to all of the devastation and the physical and financial toll of the pandemic, is that it's cracked open some much needed empathy with people. A lot of people who were lacking it before, and people recognize that the systems that we had in place just weren't working. And I think a lot of those systems were really punitive, and they were really based on distrust. And I think when you realize that the scale of the problem is so massive, that the best way to solve it is really direct. And you can't really get more direct than saying people are financially insecure. Well, what's going to fix it? Money, So I think that we have overcomplicated a lot in our bureaucracy and our policy. So guaranteed income is a really elegant and simple and direct solution to that.
Awesome. Yes, it's been pretty incredible just over the last year how much more recognition, even in elected officials like mayors, but all the way at the state and federal level, are recognizing direct cash actually has a pretty critical and important role to play. Certainly during an economic crisis, but as soon as we start to get people to recognize it, we could expand that into that as Charles Booker said in one of our events last month, that the pandemic has only just really revealed the pandemic that many people, millions of people in America have been living in before COVID, related to poverty and the pandemic of poverty that has been kind of across our nation. So, so really hopeful that this is the foot in the door that we need to expand to that larger kind of federal program for sure. But first, let's just have a little bit more of an understanding from mayors, and with Mayor Schaaf in particular, why guaranteed income? You were, like Saadia said, one of the first mayors to come on board. So tell us about what led you to decide that direct cash policies were important.
Sure. You know, what is the purpose of government? And when I think about what has brought me to public service, I believe that our purpose is to reduce human suffering and to make society more fair. And yet, government, I love government and I hate government at the same time. It drives me crazy because I feel like we have so many programs that are intended to help people, but literally torture them, make being poor a full-time job, and ask people to document their deficiencies 50 different times. Instead, let's go to the heart of the problem. And until we can really get to reparations and really deconstructing systemic racism, one of the fastest ways to address the wealth gap and the dignity gap is a guaranteed income. An income floor. We see the horrific unjust disparities based on race in income and, more importantly, wealth. And this is a very direct way of addressing that respects the dignity, the agency, and the choice of individuals. One of the things that I love about being part of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income is the evaluation kind of structure. We recognize that to change public policy, we need data, we need evaluation results, but we also need narrative change. Some of the damage that has been done to good work in the past, we're still digging out from Ronald Reagan's welfare queen trope. And I really want to commend Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and Saadia, you are a big part of this, that build in narrative change and storytelling and qualitative data as part of evaluation design. So while we are being very rigorous on the randomized control trial structure, we simultaneously are addressing the narrative change piece, because we are not interested in running pilots forever. You know, as usual, cities are where the brunt of the problem lies, and yet we don't have the resources to correct it. Our path is a path to permanence, but that is going to require policy change at the federal level. And it's not just that evaluative data that will do it, it is the narrative change. So I'm so happy to be part of this group.
Amazing. Yes, there's so much important work around that can come out of the pilots around understanding the shift that happens in a very, very deep and individually, like, personal level for people who are receiving them, that can help augment and support that quant data. And you know, those individual stories are incredibly powerful. And we're so lucky that that the Stockton demonstration happened in advance of so many of the the things that are coming out, you know, and some of the growth now, because there's so much of that data to actually start to pull into the conversation, as we're also able to look at the stories of people who have gone through pilots. So really, I'm glad that you brought, excuse me, that piece up for sure around the narrative. And I think that it's something from, you know, most of the people here in the audience recognize as well the importance of how to have the conversation with people so that they start to understand why direct cash is a problem. And you brought up some of the great observations and realities of the complexity and the kind of lack of dignity that's involved in most of the programs that exist today. But that narrative piece is really important, and kind of the persuading and helping people understand why it's important, which really gets to like what have been obstacles in socializing this concept of guaranteed income in your city? Maybe we'll start in your city and hear a little bit from Saadia at the larger level. What's been some of those biggest things that you hit up against as you've been trying to get your pilot off of the ground?
Well, let me say specifically where we're at in Oakland. We are very fortunate that we received private funding from Blue Meridian Partners to launch our guaranteed income demonstration. And this is going to support 600 families, 600 families receiving $500 a month with no strings attached for 18 months. We actually are going to have two groups. Citywide, we are unapologetically directing this, our outreach to BIPOC families. I got a lot of grief for that. I've enjoyed defending it, but we have to recognize that guaranteed income is also a racial justice structure, and that racial justice is what government should be pursuing. So that is part of our intentionality. We are having, though, two groups. 300 families are going to be from a 1 square mile part of Oakland that is one of our most stressed demographics in our city, but also has tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. And so we're excited to see what happens when you have more of a geographic concentration. The other 300 will be chosen from throughout the city. Their income requirement will be slightly lower, 25% of the area median income, where our geographically concentrated group could be up to 50% of median area income. That still is these are families that are struggling. We also are requiring that the household have one minor. We're not defining family, just that there's one minor in the household. And that is one additional restriction that I know Stockton did not have. They were much more expansive. We are interested in seeing how the impacts of guaranteed income not only impact the wellness and well-being of the adults in the household, but we believe that it will have some impact on the children as well. So that's how it's structured in Oakland. We just released the application for the geographically concentrated group in East Oakland. On our first day, we had 1,000 applicants.
Wow.
So lots of interest. But we, because we are being intentional about getting to BIPOC families and also undocumented families, we are especially reaching out to undocumented families that are not the beneficiaries of a lot of the federal aid that has come out during COVID. We are getting a lot of skepticism. We are. People think, what's the catch? Like, and particularly in our undocumented communities. We are continuing to work with trusted messengers. I think people feel a little better because they've heard about Stockton. We're talking about this is not a first come, first serve. We are randomly selecting from the pool, but people have really good reason to be skeptical of government. Obviously, there has been tremendous abuse of authority. There has been tremendous racism and disparities that government has not just perpetuated, but actually caused. And it is important that we acknowledge that as we move into this demonstration pilot. There's a lot of healing and trust building that must be done.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. I think it's interesting as you were talking about what it's like to socialize that in your community, that you really talked about what it meant for the people who would actually be receiving it, because I think that that's such an important thing that we actually don't talk much about in our community. We think, how do you convince your city council? How do you convince people in power? But just the fact that you have to think about how to convince and help people that are going to be receiving it understand what it is and why, and that lack of trust is so critical and important. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. I'm sure that'll be things that as the Congress continues for the next 2 days, that's going to come up repeatedly. I want to welcome Mayor Woodards here. Thank you so much, Mayor Woodards. I'll do a little brief introduction and then we've got some questions for you. So Mayor Woodards is the 39th mayor of Tacoma, Washington. She formerly served 7 years as an at-large member of the Tacoma City Council. She's worked with United Way of Pierce County, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, the Urban League, Sound Outreach, and the Tacoma Housing Authority. So she has a wealth and breadth of experience across so many different parts of what it takes to run a city. And I know Tacoma is very lucky to have her. She is working on a city's pilot there in Tacoma as well. Growing Resilience in Tacoma, or GRIT is what it's called, which is a great acronym. That's fabulous. Over 12 months, you're going to be providing at least 100 families with a monthly stipend of $500 each. So we're so pleased to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And the first conversation or first kind of question that we've been digging into a little bit deeper is why guaranteed income? Why is direct cash such an important thing for you as a mayor in Tacoma?
Well, thank you, Stacy, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. Hello, Libby, good to see you. my friend, fellow mayor, and MGI partner. Forgive me for being late, as a mayor. And as a human being, things do not always work on our schedules. So, but delighted to be here. When I first became mayor and I met Mayor Michael Tubbs and started learning about what he was doing in Stockton, and was very curious. And I'll be honest, I was very curious, and we were kind of talking about it in Tacoma, but it wasn't until I got that phone call from Michael that said, we're putting together mayors for a guaranteed income. Are you interested? I said, we've got a lot of issues in Tacoma. We've been talking about it, but we have a focus already through our Centers for Strong Families on this population. And so I said, yeah, I'm interested. Let's chat and see how we could be a part. And so it's moved really fast for us, but I am so grateful for the MGI movement that we're having an opportunity to provide an innovative solution, in my mind, that we had not really, that we thought about and had different pockets of conversations, but now the synergy around making something happen is what's been really great for us. We know, again, just from the Stockton example, if we don't look at data any further than Stockton, we know it works. And we've been focused in Tacoma with United Way on eradicating poverty. And while there are some tools we can use, I think this is an amazing opportunity to really get people the support they need. When we talk about Alice in Tacoma, let me just give kind of a little description of Alice. Alice is asset limited, income constraint, but the difference is employed. So these are people who get up every single day and work maybe 1 or 2, sometimes 3 jobs, but still don't have those basic supports in place to take care of themselves and their families. And so the idea that we can alleviate a little bit of the burden, I know you all have talked about it a lot, but let's be clear, $500 is not going to make someone quit their job and live off of $500, right? It really is enough to be a supplement. To be prepared for emergencies, to be able to not worry about purchasing lunch for your kids or having food in your house or being able to pay your rent and your electric bill, right? Those very simple things. And what we know through Stockton, what's proven the success of this is that's what people spend the money on, basic needs. And so that got me really excited and said, that's perfect for Tacoma. But I think what's come out of the pilot in Stockton that is even greater is just the influence it has on people's mental capacity. The fact to feel better, be able to get up every day and move forward. Sometimes that's a start in itself, but I'm excited in Tacoma that we're going to focus on 4 zip codes in our city where through our equity index, we know that's the part of the city that needs help the most. And so we're moving forward with that pilot, like I said, 100 people, $500 a month for at least 12 months. We're going to try to raise a little bit extra money so we can take it up to 18. But that is our goal, and that's why I think it's important. It's really important to destigmatize what this means and how this helps. And so I think being able to change the narrative, like that's one of the goals in Tacoma, being able to change the narrative in my own city so that people understand what this does and what it doesn't do, I think is incredibly important as well.
Thank you so much. There's so much in there to unpack and to dig into. So it's going to be great. I'm glad we have some time to do that. So, so tell us a little bit more about kind of what has been, you've started to touch on some of what's come out of the pilot process, but can you maybe tell a little bit more, maybe we'll start with Mayor Schaaf, around some of the most exciting parts of being involved in the pilot process, or maybe surprises that you didn't think would happen, but that have been, you know, really important or interesting for you as a mayor or for your community?
Well, I think the most exciting part is to move this forward. Like I said, I am not satisfied with having a pilot. This has to move to permanence. And to see, you know, this group of mayors that started at 11 now grow to 52, to hear, you know, state and federal elected officials starting to talk about a guaranteed income or basic universal income. I know UBI seems to be more fun to say than guaranteed income. Saadia, you got to help us with that. I mean, it's in the state of California's budget this year to provide matching funds for cities that are doing this work. That was not imaginable a year ago. So it really has been exciting to see how you can start a movement. I also want to commend Stockton for its evaluation, because it's not just the stories, but it is the hard data that shows. I love Michael Tubbs says UBI is better than Prozac. Like the correlation between each month someone getting that check and to see their mental wellness improve, like it's a perfect correlation. It literally shows that poverty is killing people literally. It is so stressful. It creates so much toxic stress that literally it is an illness. And we can solve it very simply. The other piece I loved, and you know, I saw some stuff in the chat questioning jobs and work, but I believe this is a really important piece of the narrative change work. People who received the guaranteed income got employed at double the rate. And so it really challenges this idea like poor people are lazy or they don't know how to use their money. Poor people just need a little bit of money to hire a babysitter so they can go on that job interview, to buy a decent jacket. Or one story I remember from Stockton, because we remember stories, we don't always remember statistics, but someone who was able to take an unpaid internship that led to a way upskilled, up-incomed job that actually sang to their heart, that was satisfying their purpose, not just a paycheck. And so that kind of data and stories combined is what I hope is going to lead us to a more compassionate society. And let me just also commend MGI has taken advantage of this moment of COVID. What a moment where the disparities, the injustice, the torture of our public systems, we've all known about that as mayors. But it really had a bright, hot light shone on it during this pandemic, as everyone saw those disparities get worse. And so we have an opportunity to take that new awareness, the awareness about the racial reckoning that we saw last summer, and translate that into policy. And we're seeing different mechanisms, how government was able to get incredible unemployment benefits out to people, was able to get rent relief. Like the mechanisms are being built as far as cash delivery system on a massive basis. So we need to just keep pushing that forward. And the mayors are here to demonstrate the success, to take those risks, and to be in the front lines of this battle for a more just system. So that's what excites me.
Well, that excites me too. That was fantastic. I love hearing more about the role of stories and data. And for people who are in the audience right now, we're going to hear from the leaders at the data center at the Center for Guaranteed Income Research at UPenn, the two lead researchers that were part of the SEED demonstration. They're going to be here tomorrow in one of the keynotes to actually talk a lot more about some of the amazing and important things that the mayors have been touching on here as far as the results of the first year of SEED and the implications. So lots more opportunity to dig specifically into some of those things as we continue our conference. But I see Mayor Carter here, so I would love to do a brief introduction of him and then pose the same kind of initial question to you as we dive into this. So Mayor Carter is the 46th and first African-American mayor of the city of St. Paul, Minnesota. He's a fourth generation St. Paul resident, and he is leading with an unapologetic equity agenda. And I suspect that the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income work is probably part of that. So I'd love to hand it over to you, Mayor Carter, and talk a little bit about why guaranteed income has been, an important part of what you want to get going in your city, and why direct cash is so critical.
Boy, thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to join you. Sorry, we had a tight schedule today here, so I'm coming in from something else. But it's a great opportunity to just ride some of my friends' coattails that I caught the end of Mayor Schaaf's comments. And so maybe I'll just start with saying ditto to all of that. And thank you, Mayor Schaaf, for getting us all fired up in this way. Look, we all know it. This past year has dealt us a larger set of challenges, a larger set of crises than we would have been able to possibly imagine a year before that, right? And so if we're going to meet that moment, then we're going to have to meet it undeniably with a larger set of solutions, a larger set of resources. I'm hanging out with the chief of staff here today. I thought she could watch a movie and sit on the side on the edge. But she's why? She's a pandemic baby. She was born right at the beginning of the pandemic. And, at a time where, my wife took a pay cut, where me and my whole leadership team took a pay cut. And, we were really blessed because we are at the head, we're at a space where we have the ability to make ends meet financially. But we saw in 2020 what we've seen, something just a really incredible phenomenon where we saw more families than ever, more people than ever in our communities who are hungry, homeless, who are unemployed, who were socially isolated. And the truth is, none of that is new. What we saw in 2020 was the reflection of the policy environment that we've created around children and families. What do you want to say? You want to say hello? Okay, now can you watch your movie? What we saw was the policy environment, the results that the policy environment that we've created around children and families has brought us, that has given us. And our mantra is no recovery. We don't want to go back to the starting line. We don't want to just go back to business as usual in the non-resilience, non-inclusive economy that we had when 2020 started. We have to do a fundamentally different way. And that's what this pilot that we're doing is. We are providing a benefit of $500 a month, unconditional benefit for 150 families who are all participants in our College Bound St. Paul program. Our College Bound St. Paul program was one of the signature kind of achievements of our administration to start a fund to start every child born in our city, including Amila, with $50 in to start a college savings account. Research shows us that children who graduate from high school with literally less than $400 in a college savings account, low and moderate income children, are 3 times more likely to go to college. And when they do, that they're 4 times more likely to graduate. So we're investing directly. That's what this is about, is changing the lens from a model of city building that centers around only identifying potential externally as we find people to pay and do different incentives to bring to our communities, to saying, wait a minute, we have an enormous amount of underutilized potential right here within all of our cities. and we need to invest in our community members. We need to invest in our families. We need to invest in our children. And if we do so, that's an even stronger road to a bright economic future and economic development for our cities than going and recruiting somebody from some other city to come and peddle their wares in our own community. So we're excited about it. It's a fundamentally different approach at fighting poverty and serving families. And I'll tell you, my response to people who ask us, why are we taking this new approach is really two things. Is why, what logic or reasoning would exist to make us say that we should just continue to fight poverty in the ways that we have for the last 60 years. Here we are 60 years into a war on poverty, and investing directly in low-income families still feels like a stunning and new idea. That's the problem, and that's the one that we're here to solve.
Excellent. Well, that was masterful, Mayor Carter. It's clear that you are having your kiddo in your life, as we all do as parents, through a kind of every moment, and the ability to focus as you were doing your dad hat as well.
I appreciate that, and she'll be quiet the moment I go on mute.
As they do, yes. Well, I think so. We've heard quite a bit about pilots, which is so phenomenal. And we've also, as we've talked about this, talked a little bit more about narrative change, and really that ultimately the goal, of course, is to put this at the federal level so that we are not dependent on, large donations from the private sector to fund this, so that there's the proper amount of money kind of dog-eared to be able to have the impact that we want to really address poverty and lift as many people out as possible. I'm curious to understand a little bit more, besides pilots, what are some other things that are important for mayors and for MGI as a whole that will help us get, in that advocacy role or in the conversations that you have that will help push the idea further up to the state and federal level? Have some of you had some experiences in that space that you'd like to share, kind of beyond the very local and important work that you've been doing in pilots?
I think your question is kind of what are some of the entry points that we're starting to see? And I guess a couple things. MGI is very clear. We do not think that the existing social safety net should be replaced. We think guaranteed income should be on top of it. We are seeing, though, kind of the concept of guaranteed income start to sneak its way into things like a much bigger EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, a much bigger young child credit on the Earned Income Tax Credit. Now, that still requires people to do their taxes, which seems like cruel and an unusual punishment to get something that we all think should be guaranteed. But this concept of giving people who need it unconditional cash, this is where we're starting to see signs of hope, and certainly an entryway to this bigger conversation. I think the other thing we've seen is the pandemic relief. The fact that for the first time, the federal government sent those checks out just to households without any strings attached, that they could cash and spend on whatever they chose they needed. That was a shift. Let's not underestimate the power of that, and how that became a big fighting point for the Congress in the next round of COVID relief. Direct cash, that, it's an old idea. I mean, Mayor Carter talked about, like, we've been doing dumb things for 60 years, but people, Martin Luther King, as an Oaklander, I'm very proud of the Black Panther Party. This was part of their platform. This is an idea has been around a long time. Its time has come. I would ask my other mayors, where do you see the path on our federal advocacy commitment?
I think you're go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mayor Carter.
I was just gonna say, I think you're so right. I think you're so very right where that's concerned. And one of the other pieces I think that's illuminating, and I'm not going to repeat what you just said, but one of the other things that I think this work is illuminating is the work that has to be done at both the federal and state levels around the cliff effects that exist in policy. You know, one of the biggest talking points for the people who try to kind of detract from our work, from our pilot, is how are you going to keep people from getting kicked off their federal and state level benefits? Because we know that so many of our policies are written such that if a family has $500 more a month to help them feed their children, they could risk losing their housing or their health care or their food or their child care type of benefits. And our response is that shows, I think, a case study in how our public policy creates the structural inequities that keep people stuck in the cycles of poverty. So our argument is the problem isn't that we are helping families have a little bit more money to make ends meet at the end of the month and to buy some milk and groceries that their family needs. The problem is that we have these policies baked in that actually disincentivize upward family mobility and keep families stuck in poverty. This isn't just an impact on our pilots, it's an impact on the people who tell us in community right now that they have people who can't take a job or can't take a raise or can't take a promotion because they're afraid of losing their benefits. That's a problem at the state and the federal level. And I think our work is also illuminating all of the big work that has to be done where that's concerned. Go ahead, Mayor Woodards.
I'll just amen what they just said. It's a great thing about being with these mayors. This is not a conversation where we disagree on much, but I will amen everything they said. But I'll also say that we're having conversations at the state level because we do know clearly at our city levels, at local government levels, our ability to fund this is next to impossible, given all of the areas that we're already working with and are underfunded. And so the idea that we can continue to have this federal conversation is important. What I appreciate about MGI and the way that we're rolling this out is the fact that we're going to give you the data. We're going to give you the stories. We're going to show you in cities of all sizes across the United States, we're going to show you how these pilots work. And I think having that data, and I'll say the other thing that MGI is doing that I think is so incredibly right is this whole data piece, right? So it's not just the anecdotal stories that we're going to be able to tell. We're going to have true data that shows people how it works. Again, I said earlier, $500 is not going to solve everybody's problem. $500 isn't going to solve most people's problems, but it certainly will make a dent and give people the ability to be able to think differently and to prepare for emergencies, as I said earlier. You know, often in America, we blame individuals for poverty and its impact. But the reality is it's systemic and intergenerational issues, as Mayor Carter and Mayor Schaaf both alluded to. It is important that we stop looking at individuals and start looking at these systems that don't encourage people to move forward, that actually discourage and disincentivize them from wanting to do better for themselves and their family. And I think raising this conversation up at the federal level, but still, again, even raising it up in our local communities, while we may not be able to own it completely at the city level, being able to have community members who are seeing the benefits and the effects of guaranteed income programs, being able to be those additional voices that are raising it up at the federal level, I think is another way for us to be able to raise this conversation and shed more light on it to see how successful it can be.
Well, and we're starting to, we want to close this out with questions from the audience. And actually just this last conversation has answered many of the questions that have been coming up through the audience over the last, 45 minutes that we've been together. So you guys are doing a great job of just kind of organically hitting the next kind of layer of topics that people are really kind of getting excited about. I am curious, and there's a question about this idea of MGI and the relationship with other mayors and other mayor organizations. There's the U.S. Conference of Mayors and others that get together regularly. Do you guys, are you guys involved in kind of relationship building with other mayors or being part of these larger conferences to kind of promote guaranteed income? What does that look like?
Well, I would say so. The reason I know these two mayors so well is because we do participate actively in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So again, this, I think you heard it from everybody. This year has really shown an even bigger spotlight, and the fact that we have 55 mayors now as a part of MGI, you can guarantee. I wouldn't be surprised at the conference in September if there's not a plenary session talking about MGI. You also have the National League of Cities, of which I am currently the second vice president of. And it's a conversation I'm going to be raising there as well. So I kind of feel like the momentum is there, and the spotlight is shining, and this is our opportunity to bring it to the forefront. But it is a conversation that we've been having in those meetings. I'll also add, all of us are also part of the Bloomberg leadership development programs. And so those conversations are happening there. So I think the excitement that this is generating across the country and the interest is coming out of being in these rooms with other mayors and sharing these ideas and the success and the data and having them figure out how can I make this work in my city?
Awesome. You know, what's come up a lot here is not only, you know, I think many of the people here in the audience, because we're all working in the space of guaranteed income and basic income, recognize that our economy isn't broken. It's actually working exactly how it was designed to. So let's redesign it. There's been a lot of in the conversation in the chat, as well as in the questions around benefits cliffs and how do you address that in your pilots. And Mayor Schaaf, I saw you put a note in the chat around at a state level that there was an attempt to be able to protect people who are getting direct cash so that it doesn't impact their benefits. But is that something, I think it'd be great for us to spend just a couple minutes on how you guys are addressing that and what you need, what kind of support you need to be able to be more effective in that part of it.
Well, and I'm going to ask Saadia to jump in, because she's at the overall level, like she's watching all 55 of us navigate, because as much as we are here because cities are the innovation laboratories, mayors, I always say we really don't belong to any party except the party of get shit done, because we are like in our communities, like viscerally feeling the pain and the trauma every day in a very direct way that I don't think any other layer of government quite gets. We really have got to get this to the state or federal level. It cannot fall on cities. Every failure of our systems rolls down to cities. And yet we are not given the resources to fix them. So we have been so grateful to be part of this community of mayors, of public servants that believe in this more just future. And I know that the leadership has been very strategic about how we're going to get to that place.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. That's absolutely right. I mean, there's just no way that we can move beyond pilots, as important as they are. It's a finite number of people that we can help with, even with Mayor Carter using some federal money, or Mayor Schaaf amazingly being able to fundraise the several $1 million privately for her program. We're still only talking about a very small amount of the people who actually live in these cities, much less all of the other many cities outside of the 52 who are part of MGI, right? So what we really need in America is a federal income floor that nobody can fall below. And the only way that we can do that is through the federal government. And so I think that MGI has always been really clear that that is our North Star goal, and that pilots and cities and mayors are our way of getting there. And I also think it's like really kind of amazingly subversive that the federal government should pay for it. Because when you talk to people and you survey them and you say, like, what is the institution you least trust? People always say the government. They put the government above big banks, big pharma, like every other hated institution in America, right? And the reason I think for that is because so many government programs don't actually trust people, right? I think all of us have talked about this to some extent, that so many of our programs are based on this really punitive, extractive
idea that people are, the cynicism that people are just going to spend the money the wrong way, that you have to give them training programs or something because they couldn't possibly just take money and go spend it on a car repair so that they can get to their job and actually make an income, right? So I think this idea that the federal government should be paying for it is amazing, both in the fact that that's the only feasible way we can do it, but also in the fact that it really turns this idea of trust on its head. Like, politicians ask us to trust them, we vote for them, right? So they should trust us, their constituents, to spend money the right way. And the data backs that up. And so I think this also goes back to this idea of how important the narrative is. If we had a country that was only based on what data showed us, it would be a beautiful country. I mean, we would have so much less inequality, probably none at all. We could get rid of poverty overnight. And that just shows us how far we kind of have to go in changing hearts and minds. And I think that that is always what we're aiming to do with mayors, showing what's possible on the ground level, and then hopefully inspiring their congressional and presidential leaders to take that up as well. And we're seeing that, we've talked about that. We've got the stimulus checks. We have the analysis on the stimulus checks that showed how much they helped people. We have the CTC coming next month. Almost every parent in America is going to start getting a monthly payment. And it's going to cut child poverty in half, but it's only temporary. And when you look at that, you're kind of like, well, why would we only cut child poverty in half? And why would we only do it for 1 year, right? So I think that once you give somebody something, it's a lot harder to take it away. So I think we've made some tremendous progress in this. I think that the CTC will be extended. Biden has already said he wants to extend it through 2025. There is a host of congressional members who are pushing him to extend it permanently. And again, I think the other sort of hidden question here is, how do you pay for it? I think anybody who reads the news and saw what happened with the ProPublica reporting last week, I mean, listen, we can afford it. Billionaires can pay anything. I wouldn't even say their fair share. They should start paying anything. All the rest of us pay our taxes, right? So why are they not paying theirs? And we could have a progressive tax system that allows us to provide this income floor for everybody, and it would still allow the billionaires, like maybe Jeff Bezos doesn't have like the secondary boat that takes him to like his giant super yacht. Maybe he just has the super yacht, but like he'll be fine. And everybody else should be able to live with dignity and well-being and have the opportunity that everybody who has had the generational privileges in America has benefited from. So I think that's really what's sort of at the core of it. And that's why we have to take it to the federal level.
Hear, hear. And we do see, when the federal government is involved in the payments, like the stimulus checks, I'm so glad that you brought some of those kind of key pieces up that have gone out. They're able to actually tag it as non-income so it doesn't affect benefits. There's the mechanisms, the right levers can get pulled so that doesn't need to be happening at that state level. There can just be a clear understanding of how that's getting tagged at the IRS, so that they don't get penalized in all the really egregious ways that the poor continue to be across the different programs that exist right now. So we're coming up to the top of the hour, but I wanted to just give that we've covered so many different topics and important parts of this, but I would love to just give each of the mayors an opportunity to say any last words that they would like to as we kind of head out into the rest of our Congress. We're going to spend a little time with opening remarks, so all the audience can stick around for an extra 15 or 20 minutes if they'd like to understand a little bit more about about all the technologies that we're using and film screening that's about to come up directly following this, as well as announce some high school essay contest winners. That's a bunch of, we had a contest going with high schoolers to be able to write our great papers about guaranteed income, basic income. We want to be able to bring them up on the stage. But I'd love to have the mayors close us out on any kind of last words that you think is really important to set the tone for the work that we're doing and why it's so important.
So I'll start again. It cannot be said enough that poverty is not personal failure, it is policy failure. That core belief. Guaranteed income is a very significant piece of that overall puzzle, but we all recognize there's much more work to do to solve the systemic failures that we have perpetuated. So just cannot tell you how grateful I am to Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, Saadia, Mayor Tubbs, my fellow mayors who are like my favorite human beings to be around, and Melvin as a mom that juggled a baby on my lap and breastfed while running meetings. Like, you're doing a great job. Without a breast, that's hard. So just this is why we have to do this work. So just pleasure to be here today in the fight, and we are going to get this done. I absolutely believe it.
Well, I feel like Mayor Carter should be the one that is the next to go after that lovely.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the shout out, even with the acknowledgement of my shortcomings. I appreciate it, Mayor Schaaf. Look, this is about just thinking fundamentally differently. When we do this, and we've done different things like establishing Office of Financial Empowerment or establishing a legal defense fund for immigrants and refugees. And one of the most common questions we get when we kind of charter new paths is that the proper role of city government? And Mayor Schaaf said it right. It's that whatever the case is, whatever a community faces, mayors have to be waist deep in community, and we have to just figure out how to address whatever happens as a fallout from paralysis too often in Washington, D.C., paralysis at our state capitals too often. Mayors are just stuck on the front lines one way or the other. But the reason that question really offends me is because it pretends that even in the face of a moment where we can acknowledge that we haven't gotten the outcomes that we want around poverty, around public safety, around education, on so many different topics, that our role should still be primarily defined based on repeating the same old precedents, the same old practices, the same old policies that we're used to our cities and our communities being able to do. You see mayors on this call, you see mayors in MGI, you certainly saw a mayor in Mayor Michael Tubbs, who's a close friend and younger mentor of mine and many of ours, who has said, no, that's not good enough. Our top challenge, our top goal has got to be identifying the challenges that our families, our communities, our children face, and finding aggressive, finding assertive, finding proactive ways to address those challenges. Guaranteed income is controversial only in halls of government. Every street in America, every community in America, every place in America know that they and their neighbors need more cash. They need more resources. They need more ability to kind of make ends meet. That they have neighbors who are working 60, 80 hours a week and still running out of money at the end of the month just for the basics, just to feed their family. Now, all of us know that. We all know that our policies too often are like patronizing toward families that say, here's some money, but you can only use it for childcare. You can only use it for food, or you can only use it. When in fact, that's not how families work. One family might need food and another family might need help with health insurance or something else. Some family that needed help for housing last month might have had a car breakdown this month. That's not how families work. It's easier maybe to administer, but if our goal is actually to help people, then we should center our policy making around helping people. And that's what this is about. And that's why I'm so excited to be a part of this work.
Hear, hear. Fantastic. Well, let's have Mayor Woodards close us out.
No pressure. Seriously, again, I too am incredibly grateful for MGI and the way that they have lifted up this work nationally. And I know we all keep referring to Mayor Tubbs, who is not with us today, but when I think about MGI and when I think about the faces of my community who are going to benefit from MGI, I see a different face. But when I think about the movement of MGI, I see Mayor Tubbs's face, because he really did start this for us. I'm going to be quick. Agree with my colleagues. The definition of insanity, as we all know, is keep doing the same things over and over again, and you keep getting the same results. At some point, you might want to think about doing things a little bit differently. My father, who just passed away last year used to say, well, if you stay in the same position for so long and it hurts, move, change it. And we as mayors now have an opportunity to do something innovative that is controversial in some ways, but we now have this opportunity to show the country in a small dose of the incredible impact that this could have. And so I'm just excited to be working alongside my fellow mayors. As you can hear, all of our pilots are different, which shows that we can adapt these programs to our communities, because what works in St. Paul may not work in Tacoma, or what works in Oakland may not work in St. Paul in terms of the specifics. But let's be clear, getting cash into the hands of our families who need it the most, no matter where they live, is helpful. And so I'm excited. We're calling ours a demonstration, but clearly it's a demonstration that we learn from so that we can continue to do it. And I look forward to lifting these pilots up and this data up, continuing to lobbying. I want to say to everybody who's a part of this conference, the 128 people that I can see who are here today, continue, even though you may not be a mayor, continue to raise these issues in your own community. It is only by the pressure of the people in our communities, of the everyday people who wake up every day and care about their community. It is only hearing from those people who are going to change the national conversation and who are going to help us get this passed nationally. So don't let this conference be information only. Let this be a point of action on how you can engage locally to make sure that we can change the outcomes for families nationally. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I think it was just perfect, Mayor Woodards, that you finished this out. That was a great inspirational kind of moment for the rest of the audience here to understand how important it is to take this and do action and to support all of the work that's happening. And really, ultimately, we are actually partnered with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income to do grassroots work to get more mayors to join. So there's opportunities for people in cities to sign petitions, to get their small business owners to sign open letters to their mayors so that we can continue to grow. We're hoping to hit 100 by the end of the year. That is our grassroots goal. But absolutely, critical that we think about this information and this excitement and energy from this conversation and do something with it, because that's what we're all here to do. So thank you so much, Mayor Schaaf, Saadia, McConville, Mayor Carter, and Mayor Woodards for spending time with us today. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and cannot wait to hear more from you all in the coming months. So take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you all. Tell your mayors.
Tell your mayor.
Yeah, we need
Tell your mayors.
I was on mute.
And so I want to, for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to do some opening remarks for the conference. And Mike Howard is back on screen with us, which is fabulous. He's like he said at the beginning of this, our host. So he's going to get us into some of the next parts of what we're going to talk about. And so take it away, Mike.
Wow, what an amazing opening to the Congress. Who would have thought 2 years ago that we would have over 50 mayors of American cities calling for a guaranteed minimum income? I just found it so inspiring. And I'd have to say on a personal note, I'm trained as a philosopher, to hear elected officials, mayors of major cities saying that we need to begin thinking fundamentally differently, and particularly on topics of poverty, work, and income. It's just really astounding. So let's shift gears now. What we brought together for you is over 100 speakers, over 35 sessions, and none of this would be possible without the efforts over several months. We've been meeting every week and taking on tasks every week to make all of this possible. So I'm going to introduce the whole committee. Some of them will have some additional remarks from their respective organizations, but I first want to acknowledge the whole committee. First of all, from the income movement, Stacy Rutland, whom you've all just been meeting with. From USBIG, my organization, USBIG, US Basic Income Guarantee Network, we have Larry Cohen and Eri Noguchi. From the Basic Income Canada Network, Sheila Regier, Monica Viktorova, and Ben Earl. And from the Basic Income Canada Youth Network, we have Walid Herzala. And I also want to introduce from our committee, the project manager, Hannah Wong, and technical staff, Gray Black and Megan Alexandra. And now I would like to invite for opening remarks, Stacy, Sheila, and Waleed. And I'll turn it now over to Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Arian, excuse me, Eric, Sheila, and Waleed, do you guys want to turn on your video to say hello? Oh, all of the lovely people. I think Waleed is getting added as a panelist now if he's somewhere out there. But we'll go ahead and get started with this part of it. So, so everybody that's on the screen are people who I've had the pleasure of working with for many months now, doing the work to make this conference possible. It's been fantastic and exciting and a lot of work, but good work, the kind of work we want to be doing. So I'm just going to really briefly mention one of the sponsors for this event. So Fund for Humanity, which is run by Giselle Huff, and I know she's in the audience because I saw some notes from her in the chat as the conversation was happening with mayors. So Fund for Humanity actually bestowed a very, very gracious grant to the NABIG Congress this year to be able to do some really important things. One, to create the website that actually now exists for the Congress and will continue to exist in perpetuity, to help us bring on some of the people that Michael just introduced, Hannah and Megan and Gray for the project management, and really has made it so that we are now having kind of a thriving digital footprint out there for this conference. So we want to just right at the top of this, send a huge thank you out to Giselle from Fund for Humanity. And you're going to be able to hear from Giselle a couple of times during this. She's going to be on some panels. So, so you'll get to see and hear a little bit more about how Fund for Humanity is supporting some really key and critical work that's happening in the larger movement for guaranteed income, for basic income. But now I'm going to hand it over to Sheila to talk a little bit more about some other things.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Stacy. So I'm going to begin by going off script. I know what I'm supposed to do. The first thing I'm going to do is ask everybody to give a sort of virtual thanks and thumbs up to you for your leadership. So we do all that first. The second thing I want to talk about, so I'm the chair of the Basic Income Canada Network, and it was, I think, in 2006 that a number of us in Canada discovered this wonky little thing called NABIG. You know, I can think there were 12 people in a room gathered somewhere in Boston that year. But that led to us in Canada becoming an international affiliate to be part of NABIG, part of BIEN, and to really create the movement in Canada. So I think we incredibly owe a lot to NABIGs for the movement growth in this country. It's been a place for us to connect with each other and for us to connect with people in other countries around the world. So I just think that's amazing. I do want to give a special thanks to Hannah Wong. She is the project manager for this Congress and our first virtual one, which has just been a tour de force so far, and I'm so looking forward to the next couple of days. Hannah has just been so gracious, so calm, some of us aren't, and so efficient. So thank you so much, Hannah and Stacy. And I will turn it, who am I supposed to turn it over to? Waleed.
Thanks, Sheila. My name is Waleed. I'm one of the other members of the coordinating committee for the Congress this year. And I wanted to kick things off by providing a special shout out to our tech support leads, Megan Alexandra and Gray Black, who managed to set up all 30 of the sessions that you're going to see over the next couple of days and get up our extensive program up on the website. That's a lot of work, but it's very critical. So just wanted to thank them for all the behind the scenes work that they've done. I also wanted to thank everyone for coming out today and supporting the Congress and making an active effort to become more involved in the basic income movement, both in Canada and the US, and working across borders. I think it's been a really crazy year, both for the world as a whole, but for the basic income movement in particular as well. And I think this year's Congress is going to be unique because it's achieved a few different milestones. I think, first of all, it's the first year that it's virtual. And even though that's been a challenge in some ways, it's also opened up a lot of opportunities. And we've doubled our maximum attendance from prior years. We have more than 500 people registered. And it's also allowed us to reach people from different parts of the world and expand beyond North America. So I'll provide a quick plug for the International Perspectives on Basic Income, on the Basic Income Movement session tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Secondly, I think it's unique because it's the first year that we have a dedicated youth representative on the NABIG coordinating committee, and that would be myself. I'm representing the Basic Income Canada Youth Network. And I think that's really significant because as the basic income movement picks up steam, it's critical that youth play a really important role in that movement. Not only because basic income can really help youth, but because youth are critical drivers of change in society. And the more that we can do to engage youth in the basic income movement, I think the better that's going to be for the movement as a whole. And on that note, I'd also like to provide another plug for the Basic Income Canada Youth Network session tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. And on that note, I'd like to pass it off to Ari, who's going to have a very exciting youth-related announcement to share with everyone.
Hi, thanks, Waleed. And it's perfect that I'm following Waleed because we are very committed to trying to engage more young people in basic income. So we held the first basic income high school essay contest this year, and we're delighted to be able to announce our two winners on the opening day of this NABIG Congress. The contest itself is the brainchild of Aliza Hewitt, and I'm hoping she's in the audience and is hearing this. And she, Robert Taylor, and I served as the coordinating committee for what we hope will become an annual affair. Thank you also to our volunteer readers, Alexandra Blaze D'Amico, Michael Hughes, Amy Hughes, Jamie Cook, and Chris LaPlante, who read through all of the essays and multiple times. And thank you also to USBIG and the Basic Income Canada Network and the Ursuline Sisters of Chatham for providing the cash prizes for the winning essays from the US and Canada respectively. Before I get to the main event or the main announcement, I also want to recognize the 4 runner-up high school students who submitted essays to the contest that warrant honorable mention. Praneet Rati submitted the essay, UBI, the Fight for Opportunity. Wessel Bakri submitted the essay, The Effects of a Basic Income on Addressing Racial, Social, and Environmental Justice. Jasenia Garcia submitted the essay, UBI is Not a Handout. And Jacob Manukian submitted the essay, Should Canada Have a Basic Income? Why or why not? And immediately following this session, we invite all of you to come talk with these students, as well as our 2 winners in Kumo Space. Look for the Kumo Space room labeled Meet the Gen Zers. And drum roll, please. Now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to announce to you our 2 winners this year, Joshua Miller from the US and Miranda Reed from Canada. May I ask Josh and Miranda to activate your camera so we can all see you? And I'm going to let them tell you what their essays were. And congratulations to you both. Joshua, why don't you go first?
Without further ado, my name is Joshua Miller. I'm a high schooler in New York, obviously United States. I wrote my essay called Gaining Ground, basically addressing my perception of why a UBI is a good idea. And instead of saying that there's a crossroads in the UBI movement between UBI advocates who pursue UBI because it's a good idea for economic growth, and UBI advocates who pursue because it's an idea that disrupts the current structure of society. I took the former stance and advocated UBI as the best way to address poverty, specifically in the Western world.
Thanks so much, Josh. Miranda, come on up.
So my name is Miranda Reed. I'm 17, I'm in grade 12, and I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia. So my essay was called The Role of UBI in the Fight Against Climate Change. So in these next few years, I'm going to be doing my degree in oceanography. So I'm really passionate about the environment. And so my essay was all about how a basic income can really help people get involved in helping the environment.
Thanks so much to you both, and congratulations again. Back to you, Stacy.
Awesome, thank you. Good. Thank you, Josh and Miranda, amazing. I love hearing all of the different titles of both the winning essays and some of the other essays that got the honorable mentions. There's a lot of really great information out there, and we'll let you guys know. I can't remember, Ari, are we going to be sharing those papers?
Yes, they'll be posted on the website. They may already be. And also the link to their essays, I hope that Josh and Miranda aren't embarrassed. The link directly to their essays was just posted into the chat right now as well.
Awesome. Well, and Ari mentioned at the right before we had the pleasure of hearing from the winners that they're going to be in the next part of our event, our opening evening, which is a social hour that we're going to have, that we're using a new piece of technology for, that's going to help us have a little bit more of a kind of networking casual experience. And so this is a great segue into what technologies we're using this year. So obviously we're using Zoom for some of our sessions. The sessions that we're using Zoom for are our keynote sessions. So there's 6 of those. There's 2 today, and then there's 2 each subsequent day as well. Those are featured on our website in the keynote kind of workshop area of the website, so you can see what those different sessions are. Those link directly to a Zoom webinar link. The crux of most of our sessions are actually happening in Crowdcast. And so you'll see when you're in the schedule for the events this full Congress, that each of the titles in the schedule that's on the website actually is a direct link to the piece of technology, to the session itself that you need to go to in order to be able to participate. If you haven't already registered, Mike mentioned this at the top of the hour, if you haven't already registered for the event as a whole via Eventbrite, we definitely recommend that you do that. You will get an email that directly following that has the password that's going to get you into all of the sessions. So that's an important piece. If you don't already have it, that's an easy way to get it. And then if you go to that schedule and click on, read a little bit more about the different sessions, you find something you're interested in attending, just click on the title. It'll take you directly to the event, and you just drop in the password and you can add yourself. You can do that at any time. Right now, if you wanted to go through and spend a little time setting up your schedule for the next couple of days, you can do that. Or you can just pop in real time right before things start, drop in that password and get access. So it's really up to you how you want to do that. But just so you know, that schedule that's on the website is the kind of single source of truth for you as you move through this experience. The only additional piece that we don't actually have links to on the website is Kumo Space, as Ari just kind of mentioned a few minutes ago. Kumo Space is, if you aren't familiar with it, is actually a pretty cool new, they say that it's for meetings, but it feels like a casual meeting probably is the best way to think about it. Kumo Space is a place that's actually broken out into rooms. And so for this conference, we wanted to make sure that we had those experiences that are so important in a conference, which is after a session like this, people go and start having conversations with either panelists, people that spokes, the committee members, or other audience members that they want to just connect with and start talking shop about basic income, because that's some of the funnest times that we probably all have in our lives, is finding other people who are just as passionate about this as we are. So Kumo Space is that space. And I think that we've probably dropped at least once, maybe multiple times, the direct link to Kumo Space. This is not password protected. So that's why we don't have it publicly out there in the world. We'd really like to make sure that the people that are joining this are people who are part of our community that are excited about being here and that are going to kind of be in the spirit of basic income together as we do this. So when you go to Kumo Space, you'll see there's, how many rooms do we have set up, Ari, at this moment? 20 rooms. Holy moly. So each room can have up to 30 people join that room. And when you actually, there's different titles of the rooms, like Ari said, the winners of the essay writing contest are going to be in the Gen Zers room, but there's lots of different topics that can help you think about, like, what conversation do I want to have right now? I want to join that room with other people who are interested in that topic. When you go, you'll see you can activate your audio, your mic, and your camera, and you are actually an avatar moving around a room, and your mic has a limited span. So as you move around the room and you get closer to other people in the room, you're going to start to hear them. So and they'll start to hear you. So it's really an opportunity, if you think about a social hour in any kind of ballroom conference scenario, you go grab a drink or grab a snack and you walk around. That's what Kumo Space is designed to actually mirror. So you can go find a room where there looks like there might be some interesting people, and you can go in and start having conversations with people. If there's somebody here that you want to meet up with, a colleague or a friend, when you get into Kumo Space, you can actually search them and see if they're in Kumo Space right now and what room they're in, so you can go and actually start to have the conversation. You can direct message people, so we know exchanging business cards or contact information is an important part of how we want to make sure that the community stays connected long after this conference. In Kumo Space, you can do some of that. You can direct message people, and you can share further information so that you can, after the Congress is over, continue your conversations. So we're about to wrap this up amazingly right on time. I feel incredibly proud of this moment because it's almost always that things run over, but we're doing it here. So we're gonna go ahead and close out this Zoom, and we're all going to head over to that Kumo Space. We're going to drop it one last time, the links, so you can actually just click on it right now and have it open up in your browser. And you don't have to join. When you open that up, you aren't in a room until you actually click and say on a specific room that you want to join. So if you want to just get it up and open and go grab something to eat or do whatever it is you need to do for a little break, feel free. Directly after the Kumo Space hour of networking and experience, we're going to move right into a very exciting second part of the opening evening, which is we're going to screen the documentary film Inherent Good. So we're going to screen it live together. That'll be another Zoom because it's one of the keynotes. And directly following that, we're going to have an amazing and exciting panel discussion with the filmmakers, Rennie Soga, Steve Borst, and Trey Crowder, who is, people may know him as the liberal redneck. He is a star and producer of the film as well. And so we're going to have a lively, I'm sure he's a comedian, so I'm sure it's going to be a lively, fun conversation. But it's really, we're going to be able to provide a little bit of a film festival experience for you, where you get to watch a film and immediately talk to the filmmakers and learn a little bit more about what inspired them, why they created the film, and all of that amazing stuff. So if you go to that single source of truth, that schedule on the website, when it's time for that to start, just click on that. You'll get into another Zoom and we'll start watching the movie together. Are there any, have I covered all the things? Does that feel like a good? Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you here. We're excited to do this work together and to have some fun together for the next 3 days. And looking forward to having a conversation with you in Kumo Space. We'll see you over there.